My husband likes skinny women, so he forces me, someone who weighs only 47 kilograms, to eat just one apple a day. My name is Claire Anderson. He said I was perfect when I looked like I hadn't slept or eaten in days, so he made sure I didn't. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story, because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. The apple was always cold. He liked it that way. Crisp, glossy, a little bead of condensation rolling down its skin like a tear. He'd set it on a white plate as if plating art, not punishment, and slide it toward me across the kitchen island with 2 fingers. "One," Daniel would say, tapping the plate. "Your apple." He would smile like we shared an inside joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was the rule. I weighed 47 kilograms and kept my breath small so I wouldn't take up space. That morning, the scale clicked under my feet, the digital blue settling on numbers that made him hum with satisfaction. I used to look at numbers and think of color palettes, room measurements, fabric orders. Now numbers meant whether I deserved to swallow. I am an interior designer, a freelancer who spends long hours at home, sketching floor plans between the thumps of my heart, drinking water like a hobby, timing my sips so he wouldn't notice. My kitchen used to smell like butter and cinnamon and the first slice of a cake you cut before it's cool. Now it smells like disinfectant and apples. He threw away my baking pans the day he found me licking frosting from a spatula. "You're better than this," he said, and I wanted to ask, better than human. There is a way a person can look at you and erase you at the same time. That was Daniel's gift erasure delivered with a gentle voice. "You're beautiful when you're disciplined," he would say, running a finger down the side of my face, stopping at my jaw as if checking the edges for excess. "When you let yourself go, I don't recognize you." I bite into the apple. The skin cracks with a sound that fills the silence like a scream I'm not allowed to make. He watches. He always watches. He never eats with me. He waits until later, steak, wine, dark chocolate consumed in front of me like a ceremony. A reminder desire exists, just not for you. You might imagine I shouted back that I slammed plates and hurled the apple into the sink. But control taught its own language, and mine had become whisper. You don't notice cages until you walk into them and find the door already shut. My cage had a marble countertop, expensive stools, and a husband who kissed the top of my head on his way out to the gym. "Do your walk," he says, checking his watch. 10 kilometers, low pace, sweat is your friend. He prints me lists, you know. A man who believes in spreadsheets cannot fathom love as something messy or full. He tracks my steps, my water intake, my sleep, my weight, my worth. There's a column for transgressions. Once I ate 2 apples. I wrote it down like a confession. He drew a red circle around the number and didn't speak to me for 2 days. Silence was worse than anger. Silence said I would disappear completely if I didn't behave. By noon, my sight comes in and out like a failing light bulb. I hold a paint chip book to the window and the colors look like they're slowly drowning. I'm working up the nerve to tell a client she needs to push back her renovation because I can't lift my arms long enough to hang a sample board. I draft the email and delete it and draft it again. Shame is a clever editor. The first time I fainted, I told myself it was the heat. The second time, the bathroom tiles snapped at my cheekbone and I learned the vocabulary of impact, starburst, shatter, ring. I wore sunglasses to the grocery store for a week. Daniel bought me a silk scarf. "You bruise easily," he said, as though that was the real problem. He had rules about makeup. Only mascara, he'd say. "You don't need anything else if you do the work." The work meant hunger. It meant surrender. At night, he would show me photographs of women models whose bodies looked like accusations and say, "That waist. Look, Claire, that's elegance." I learned to nod with my face while my bones set off quiet flares only I could see. Every rule comes with a story. His story was this. He grew up with a mother who told him women ruined themselves by indulging. He said the word indulge like it was a stain you couldn't scrub out. He wasn't a monster, he insisted. He was a curator. He said he was helping me become the best version of myself. The best version apparently was a vanishing act. There are parts of me I didn't know were still alive until they stirred. A small secret muscle in the back of my throat that once knew laughter. A long still tied inside my chest that used to rise when I smelled garlic sautéing in olive oil. Memory is a rebellion. It sneaks you back into rooms you've been banned from and shows you your hands making something delicious, warm, forbidden. I imagine butter melting on toast and my heart gallops like it remembers being fed. I keep a tumbler by the sink and fill it and empty it and fill it again. Water pretends to be food for a while. It lies kindly. On the fourth refill, my phone buzzes. It's a client asking if the dining chairs should be linen or leather. I type linen and delete it. Leather would outlast small children. I type leather and send. A win. A choice. A suggestion that lasts after it leaves your mouth how intoxicating that used to be. When he comes home, he brings me a new scale, sleeker, smarter meaner. It syncs to his phone. This will keep us honest, he says, unboxing it like it's the future. He turns the device so its face flashes up at me, and I see my reflection bent by glass, a funhouse version of my own face. Step on. I do. And there is the number again. The moment. Again the appraisal again. He nods. He kisses my forehead. See, it works. He believes what he says. That may be the strangest cruelty when the person who harms you calls it love and apologizes with fresh lilies for the entryway and a playlist he made for your morning walks. He knows how to arrange flowers so they look effortless. He knows where to put a lamp to soften a harsh corner. He knows every trick except how to see me. There is a whisper in me that used to be a voice. It says, small things, hide a granola bar in the studio drawer. Call Amy, tell the doctor the truth. I put the granola bar in the cart at the grocery store and then take it out. I scroll to Amy's name and then set the phone back down. I rehearse the truth in my head. He limits my food. It sounds ridiculous when you're almost 40 and intelligent and technically free to leave, but cages can be transparent. It takes time to realize the glass is there. That night, I lie awake and listen to the hum of the refrigerator, the house breathing like a giant animal around us. Daniel sleeps on his side of the bed, the linen sheet lifting and falling with his chest. I count the movement like sheep. When the air conditioner kicks on, I can smell the faint ghost of cinnamon from a cake I baked a lifetime ago that rose too fast and sank in the middle. I laughed, then scooped the failure with a spoon and called it pudding. It was delicious. The memory fills me like a meal. In the dark, I make a promise so quiet I can hardly hear it. Not a revolution, not a scream. A seed. I'm going to start watching him the way he watches me. I'm going to weigh things too. His absences, his glances at other women, the places his phone sleeps and wakes. If I must be measured, then so will he. The apple waits on its plate for morning. I fall asleep dreaming of bread that tears in your hands, the crack of a crust still singing from the oven butter sinking into hot places. Desire isn't a sin. Starvation is not a love language. Somewhere inside me, a locked door shifts in its frame. The house knows. I know. The hinges remember how to move. Daniel always said he liked honesty. But in truth, he only liked it when it reflected his own beliefs back to him, like a polished mirror. Any thought that belonged solely to me was treated like a crack in that mirror, a flaw he needed to sand down or cover. The cracks in our marriage began quietly like hairline fractures in glass. I saw them but told myself not to look too closely. That's how survival worked in our house. You squint at the wrongness until it blurs into something tolerable. One evening, he sat across from me at the dining table, swirling his glass of red wine while I gnawed on my apple. He leaned back, his shirt collar open, his muscles catching the glow of the chandelier. He always positioned himself where the light made him look like a painting while I was left in shadow. You should have seen her at the gym today, he said, casually sipping. Perfect lines, barely any body fat. She's inspiring. The knife I was using to slice the apple paused midair. He didn't even notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to care. I'm already 47 kilos, Daniel, I said quietly. Do you know how little that is? He chuckled, shaking his head like I was a child who didn't understand numbers. 47 is fine for now, but we both know there's room to improve. Look at you. Your cheeks are still soft. A true model doesn't have cheeks, Claire. Just angles. Angles are elegance. I swallowed the acid, burning the back of my throat. My cheeks, the ones he used to kiss, the ones my mother once cupped with love, were now evidence of failure. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my reflection. I pressed my palms against my face, flattening my skin until it looked gaunt. I tried to see what he saw. Angles. Perfection. I looked like a ghost. The humiliation crept into the smallest corners of life. If I dared to eat a boiled egg while working late on a project, he would sniff the air when he came home, his eyes narrowing. Protein makes you bulky, he'd lecture as if I hadn't spent my career designing kitchens where families cooked meals together. At the grocery store, he inspected the cart like an auditor. "What's this?" he asked once, holding up a carton of yogurt. "It's plain. No sugar," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It's unnecessary," he replied, tossing it aside. "Stick to apples. Simple, clean, proven." A woman beside me glanced over with raised eyebrows, and I felt the blood climb to my cheeks. She probably thought I was weak, complicit. She wasn't wrong. I stood there mute as he paid for the meager groceries like a man who had conquered temptation. The comparisons were constant. At dinner with friends, he'd casually remark, "Claire has such potential if she just commits harder." I was sitting right there holding my water glass like a shield. Our friends laughed uneasily, shifting in their seats. Nobody spoke up. Nobody ever did. Afterward in the car, I whispered, "Why do you embarrass me in front of people?" He turned the key, the engine humming beneath us, and gave me a sideways glance. "It's motivation. If they know, then you'll try harder. Public accountability, Claire. You should thank me." I stared out the window at the blur of streetlights. My own husband had turned my life into a performance I never auditioned for, and the audience was everyone we knew. The worst humiliation came in the bedroom. Desire, once tender, had become another exam to pass. He would touch my hip bones like he was checking inventory. If he found softness, he sighed in disappointment. "Do you want me to find you attractive?" He'd murmur, and I'd nod, ashamed, even though attraction should never have felt like an exam. One night after he turned away and fell asleep, I curled into myself and cried silently into the pillow. Tears didn't burn anymore. They numbed. But even in that hollow moment, a small flicker sparked in me, the dangerous thought that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the broken one. Maybe the cracks weren't in me at all, but in him. Still, I kept my silence. My rebellion was nothing more than thoughts scribbled into the edges of my mind, fragile and private. But I was beginning to realize something important: cracks don't just weaken glass, they spread. And one day, under the right pressure, they shatter. Silent starvation has a sound. It's not the growl of a stomach that fades after a while like a radio station drifting out of range. It's the faint ringing in your ears, the flutter in your chest when you stand too quickly, the hollow echo of footsteps when you're the only one awake at 3 a.m., sipping water just to trick your body into believing it's been fed. I used to think hunger was loud, but it isn't. Hunger is silence pressing against your bones until they creak. By my third month of the apple diet, I had learned to move slowly, carefully, as if the world were full of glass edges. I timed my steps, careful not to waste calories. My hair began to fall in strands, clogging the shower drain, coating my pillow like brittle feathers. When I brushed it, I counted the strands, guilt searing me with each one that broke free. Daniel didn't notice at first. He was too busy measuring the curve of my waist with his eyes, pleased with his own sculpting work as if I were a piece of marble he was chiseling into shape. But my body noticed. My hands shook when I tried to sketch designs for a client. My once precise lines wavered, turning crooked. I made excuses for missed deadlines, technical issues, fabric delays. In truth, my mind was fog, thick and heavy, and I was sinking inside it. The first fainting spell came on a Sunday morning. Daniel had insisted we go for a 10-kilometer walk before breakfast. I managed the first 6, clutching the strap of my bag to keep my balance. The sky was clear, the air sharp with spring. People jogged past us, laughing, their sneakers pounding pavement in easy rhythm. And then my vision blurred. The laughter turned tinny, distant. The pavement tilted under my feet. I remember the weightless moment, like stepping off a cliff without meaning to. Then the hard slap of concrete. When I opened my eyes, Daniel was crouched beside me, his face twisted, not with fear, not with love, but with irritation. "Claire," he hissed, "get up. People are staring." My knees scraped, my palms stung, but the shame cut deepest. I pushed myself up, trembling, and forced a smile at the strangers glancing our way. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tripped." Daniel dusted off his hands as though he had fallen. Later at home, he didn't ask if I was hurt. Instead, he said, "You need more discipline. If you'd stuck to the plan exactly, your body wouldn't have given out." The words lodged inside me like splinters. My body wasn't betraying me. He was. The second collapse happened alone. I was rearranging fabric samples in my studio when the room spun. My knees buckled, and I landed hard against the work table. My cheek struck the edge, white-hot pain blooming across my face. When I came to the room, was still my breath shallow. My reflection in the window startled me, a stranger with hollowed eyes, a bruise already blooming purple across her cheekbone. I told Daniel I'd bumped into a cabinet. He narrowed his eyes but didn't press further. "Be more careful," he said, his voice sharp as broken glass. I became an expert at disguises: sunglasses to hide bruises, loose sweaters to conceal the ridges of my ribs, smiles practiced in the mirror until they seemed believable. But my body betrayed me in subtler ways. My period stopped. My teeth ached from the acid of constant emptiness. I caught colds that lingered for weeks. My skin tore easily, tiny paper cuts becoming angry wounds. And still, Daniel pushed harder. One evening, I watched him cut into a perfectly seared steak. The juice bled onto the plate, rich and savory. My mouth watered against my will. He caught my gaze and smirked. "Discipline," he reminded me, lifting a piece to his lips. "Not desire." Something inside me cracked, then not loudly, not with fireworks, but with the quiet, definite sound of a rope fraying. Late at night, lying awake beside him, I wondered how long a body could live like this. Weeks, months. Sometimes I thought of disappearing, not by death, though that shadow hovered, but by slipping away, leaving him staring at an empty kitchen with no apple on the plate. But fear held me back. Fear of him. Fear of being alone. Fear of admitting that I, a grown woman, had allowed myself to become a prisoner in my own home. And yet, in that silence, a tiny ember glowed, the beginning of anger. Anger not at myself, but at him. At the way he stripped me of humanity and called it love. Starvation was no longer just in my stomach. It was in my marriage, in my voice, in my soul. And I was beginning to realize if I didn't find a way to feed myself soon, in more ways than one, I would vanish. There's nothing more dangerous than being turned into an ornament. Daniel liked to parade me around as if I were proof of his own self-control, his own mastery over life. To the outside world, I was the polished veneer on his success story, the slim, well-dressed wife who smiled softly and never caused a scene. No one ever saw the cracks beneath the gloss. He loved events, charity galas, client dinners, family gatherings. Anywhere with a crowd, he would place his hand lightly on the small of my back, steering me like property, and whisper in my ear, "Smile. Stand straight. Remember, they're all looking." I remembered. How could I forget? The first gala I attended after months of starvation was in a grand hotel ballroom, chandeliers dripping gold onto polished marble floors. My dress, a sleek black sheath Daniel had chosen, clung to my body in ways that made me shiver. It wasn't because of beauty, it was because the fabric brushed against bones I never wanted to see. "You look stunning," he murmured, his eyes scanning me as though I were a display piece in an art gallery. "Now don't ruin it by overthinking. Just be the fantasy." The fantasy. That was what I had become, a fantasy of thinness, silence, obedience. As we mingled, people complimented him. Not me, him. "Your wife is gorgeous," Daniel, one man said with a grin. Daniel chuckled, squeezing my waist just a little too hard. "Discipline pays off," he replied smoothly. I wanted to scream. I am not a business venture. I am not a reward. I am a woman bleeding hunger behind her lipstick. Instead, I lifted my glass of sparkling water and smiled politely. But my body had its limits. Halfway through the evening, the room tilted, the music becoming too loud, the laughter cutting through me like shards of glass. I excused myself, retreating to the restroom. Inside, under the harsh white lights, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. A ghost stared back. My collarbones jutted sharply, my eyes sunk into hollows. The makeup Daniel insisted I keep light only highlighted the damage. My lipstick clung to dry cracks on my lips. A woman at the sink glanced at me, her eyes widening for a second before she looked away quickly, washing her hands with exaggerated focus. Shame flooded me. Was I that obvious? I locked myself in a stall and sat on the toilet lid, hands trembling. I pulled my phone from my clutch and typed a message to my friend Amy. "I don't think I can do this anymore." But then I deleted it. Fear wrapped around me like a chain. What if Daniel saw the message? What if Amy asked questions I wasn't ready to answer? When I returned to the ballroom, Daniel was deep in conversation with a woman half my age. Her figure lean, her laugh effortless. My heart clenched. His eyes flicked to me when I approached, then back to her. A small dismissal, almost invisible, but I felt it like a knife. "Everything okay?" he asked casually, not really looking at me. "Yes," I whispered, my throat burning with the lie. Family gatherings were worse. With friends and strangers, I could fade into the background. But with family, the scrutiny cut deeper. At his sister's birthday dinner, we sat at a long oak table laden with food: roast chicken, buttery rolls, creamy potatoes. The smell was intoxicating, cruel. My stomach twisted, growling audibly, and I prayed no one heard. Daniel leaned close, whispering, "Don't you dare." His sister passed me a platter. "Claire, you've barely touched anything. Please have some." I smiled tightly. "I'm fine. Really." Daniel beamed at them. "She's disciplined. That's why she looks so good. Not everyone can manage it." The table erupted in polite laughter, nods of admiration. My cheeks burned, but I held the smile until it ached. I wondered if anyone noticed how my hands shook as I passed the dishes along. Later in the car, I mustered the courage to say, "It hurts when you make jokes about me in front of your family." "They weren't jokes," he said flatly, eyes on the road. "They were compliments. You should be grateful people admire you. Admire me." No one admired me. They admired the lie he had sculpted from my bones. But there was one moment, a fleeting, fragile moment, when I realized someone did see me. At a client meeting, I sat sketching designs while Daniel boasted about our healthy lifestyle. My hand trembled as I shaded a detail, and the pencil slipped, smudging the paper. I gasped softly, embarrassed. The client, a kind older woman, reached across the table, touching my hand gently. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked softly, her eyes narrowing with concern. I forced a smile. Just tired. Her gaze lingered. It was the first time in months that someone looked at me and saw beyond the fantasy, beyond the facade. And though I buried the moment quickly under Daniel's watchful glare, it planted something inside me. A dangerous thought. If strangers can see through me, maybe I can see through him. The facade was cracking. Every event, every dinner, every smile was a performance that drained me further. My life was no longer about living, it was about surviving the show. But I was starting to wonder what happens when the curtain falls, when the lights go out and the audience leaves. Who am I? Then I wasn't sure yet. But I knew one thing: I couldn't keep playing this role forever. Have you ever been in a situation like this? If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. I started writing again. It wasn't anything grand, not a manifesto or a novel. Just a notebook I'd tucked into the bottom drawer of my desk, hidden beneath fabric swatches and old receipts. A plain black journal with blank pages that became the only place I was allowed to speak. At first, the words came haltingly, like a faucet reluctant to run. But once I began, they poured out of me in thick, messy strokes. I wrote about the hunger, the shame, the humiliation of sitting at a table full of food, while my husband's gaze pinned me in place like an insect under glass. I wrote about the fainting, the bruises, the way my reflection no longer looked like mine. Most of all, I wrote about the rage. It terrified me how much anger lived inside me, coiled and quiet like a snake waiting in the grass. Rage at Daniel for treating me like a statue to sculpt. Rage at myself for letting him. Rage at the world for smiling politely when he paraded me around, never asking questions. The journal became my confession booth, my secret rebellion. The first entry was simple. I am starving, but not just for food. I am starving for freedom. The second entry, he tells me I am beautiful only when I disappear. But I remember the woman I used to be, the one who laughed with her mouth open, who licked frosting from a spatula, who didn't count every bite like it was a sin. I miss her. I want her back. Every night after Daniel fell asleep, I would slide the notebook out and write until my fingers cramped. Some nights the words blurred from tears. Other nights they burned with fury so sharp I had to put the pen down before I tore through the paper. It didn't matter. The words were mine. One evening, after another suffocating dinner with his colleagues, I came home and scribbled furiously. He says, "Discipline is love. But discipline tastes like rot. Discipline leaves me shaking in the bathroom, clutching the sink so I don't collapse. If this is love, why do I feel like I'm dying?" I slammed the journal shut and hid it away, my hands trembling. It was dangerous to put these thoughts in ink. If Daniel found them, he would know I wasn't as broken as he thought. He would know I still had teeth. But part of me wanted him to know. Part of me wanted him to open that drawer, see the truth, and understand that his control wasn't absolute. My small acts of rebellion extended beyond the journal. Once, while grocery shopping alone, I slipped a granola bar into my bag. My heart pounded like I was stealing jewels. At home, I ate it in the laundry room with the dryer humming loudly, masking the sound of the wrapper tearing. The sweetness burst across my tongue, and for the first time in months, I felt alive. Another time, I accepted a slice of bread at a client's meeting. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite, watching Daniel's disapproving look when he realized what I had done. Later, he scolded me, but I didn't care. The taste lingered longer than his words. I was still caged, but the bars were no longer invisible. I could see them now, and that made all the difference. In my journal, I began writing plans. Nothing concrete at first, just lists of things I wanted back. Eat a full meal without shame. Laugh without fear of being told I look silly. Paint again just for myself. Tell someone the truth. That last one terrified me. Telling someone meant admitting I wasn't just disciplined or careful, I was being controlled, starved, erased. But the idea pulsed in my mind like a drumbeat. Tell, tell, tell. One night, while Daniel slept, I sat on the floor beside the bed with my journal open. I stared at the words I had written earlier. One day I will leave him. I don't know when. I don't know how. But I will. I traced the sentence with my finger as if carving it into stone. It felt impossible leaving him walking away from everything I had built my adult life around. But even impossible things have to start somewhere. And for me, it started with ink. The seeds of rebellion don't look like fireworks. They look like quiet scribbles in a notebook no one else sees. They look like a woman eating a granola bar in secret like she's tasting freedom. But seeds grow, and mine were starting to push against the soil seeking light. Daniel didn't know it yet, but every apple he placed in front of me was losing its power. Because while he was starving my body, my words were feeding something stronger, the will to fight back. The day I collapsed for real, there was no way to disguise it. I had been dizzy for weeks, moving through the house like a ghost on borrowed legs. My journal pages had become filled with fragmented sentences, jagged handwriting betraying the tremors in my hands. But on that morning, even my stubborn silence couldn't hold me upright. I was arranging fabric samples for a client when the world tilted violently. The swatches fluttered to the ground like autumn leaves and my knees buckled. I reached for the table, but my grip slipped, and I crumpled to the floor. The sound of my head hitting the hardwood echoed through the studio. A sharp flash of pain bloomed at my temple, and then nothing. When I woke, the air smelled antiseptic cold. My eyes blinked against harsh fluorescent lights, and I realized I was lying in a hospital bed. A thin IV line snaked into my arm. Daniel was there, standing stiffly at the corner of the room. His jaw was set, his expression carefully neutral, but his fingers drummed impatiently against his folded arms. "You fainted?" he said flatly. "Again?" I tried to sit up, but the nurse at my side gently pressed me back. "Easy," she said, her voice warm. "You're severely malnourished. Your blood pressure is dangerously low. You need rest." Her words pierced the fog in my brain. Malnourished. Dangerously low. Words you use for starving children in charity ads, not for women who weigh themselves daily at the insistence of their husbands. I glanced at Daniel, expecting him to defend me, to deny it. Instead, he scoffed softly. "She exaggerates. She's always dramatic." The nurse's eyes narrowed. "This isn't drama. This is medicine. Mrs. Anderson's body is shutting down." The doctor arrived soon after, a tall woman with sharp eyes softened by compassion. She pulled up a chair beside me, her voice steady but urgent. "Claire, your body mass index is well below healthy levels. Your potassium is critically low, that can cause your heart to stop without warning. If you continue like this, you may not survive the year." Her words fell heavy like stones. Not survive the year. I swallowed, my throat dry. I eat?" I stammered weakly. "I eat apples." The doctor's face darkened. "Apples aren't a diet. That's starvation. Whoever told you otherwise is putting your life in danger." Her gaze flicked briefly toward Daniel. I felt the weight of that look, heavy and knowing. After she left, Daniel leaned over me, his voice low and sharp. "Don't you dare make me look like a villain in here. Do you understand? They don't know the whole story. You're just fragile. You've always been fragile." His words coiled around my ribs, squeezing. Fragile. A synonym for weak, broken, disposable. But for the first time, the word didn't sink in like poison. It sparked something instead. The doctor's voice still rang in my head. "Your heart could stop." That wasn't fragility. That was survival on the edge. Over the next 2 days, I stayed in the hospital under observation. Nurses encouraged me to eat small, balanced meals, yogurt broth toast. Each bite felt both terrifying and miraculous. I chewed slowly, waiting for Daniel's disapproving glare. But here, in this sterile white room, his control loosened. He couldn't take the spoon from my hand. When a nurse smiled at me after I finished half a bowl of soup, I nearly cried. That tiny gesture of kindness of approval without cruelty cracked something open inside me. The journal came with me tucked into my bag. At night, while Daniel dozed in the chair beside the bed, I wrote furiously under the dim glow of the bedside lamp. The doctor says my heart could stop. Maybe it already has in some ways, but something else is beating again. Anger, hunger, hope. I don't know which will save me, but I know I can't keep living like this. If I die here, it will be as the woman he starved into silence. If I live, I need to become someone else. Someone who chooses her own meals, her own life, her own worth. The words trembled, but they were mine. On the day of my discharge, the doctor gave me a stern look. You need long-term care, therapy, nutrition, support, boundaries. Do you understand? I nodded, clutching the papers. She handed me a plan for recovery, a lifeline written in neat medical print. Daniel snatched the folder from my hands before I could even read it. We'll handle it, he said smoothly, tucking it under his arm as though it were a business contract. But as he turned, I slipped one page free, a simple sheet with the doctor's phone number scribbled at the bottom. I folded it into my palm, hiding it like treasure. A small rebellion, but rebellion nonetheless. That night, back in our kitchen, Daniel placed the familiar plate in front of me. A single apple, shiny and cold. I stared at it for a long time. The doctor's words echoed in my ears. If you continue like this, you may not survive the year. When I finally picked up the apple, I didn't bite it. I set it aside and poured myself a glass of milk instead. Daniel's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. And in that silence, I realized something: he couldn't stop me forever. Not if I didn't let him. The doctor's warning had done more than save my body. It had lit a fuse, and I was beginning to wonder what would happen when it burned all the way down. I thought I had hidden it well. The journal, my one safe place, my rebellion, inked in secret, was tucked at the bottom of the drawer beneath swatches of old fabric. Every time I closed it, I pressed my hand flat against the cover, as though I could seal my words inside. But nothing stayed hidden from Daniel forever. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I had gone for my walk, the one he monitored through the fitness tracker he insisted I wear. 10 kilometers, no excuses. By the time I returned, my legs ached and my chest rattled with shallow breaths. The house was too quiet. When I stepped into my studio, I saw the drawer open, fabric samples scattered on the floor, and on the desk laid out like evidence was my black journal. My blood turned to ice. Daniel sat in my chair, flipping through the pages with slow precision. He didn't look up immediately, just traced a line of words with his finger lips pressed into a thin line. When his gaze finally met mine, it was the coldest I had ever seen it. So he said softly, almost conversationally, "This is what you do when I'm not looking." When? I rushed forward, reaching for the journal, but he snapped it shut and held it out of reach. "Give it back," I whispered, panic clawing up my throat. He stood towering over me, the journal gripped tight in his fist. "You've been writing about me. About us. Lies, Claire. Poison." "They're not lies," I said before I could stop myself. My voice shook, but the words hung there undeniable. His eyes narrowed, his nostrils flaring. "Excuse me? They're not lies," I repeated louder this time. My whole body trembled, but I couldn't take it back. For once, I refused to. His laugh was sharp, cruel. He slammed the journal down on the desk, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. "You think this makes you strong? Scribbling little complaints like a teenager? You embarrass yourself." He leaned in so close I could smell the sharp tang of his cologne. "You belong to me. Your body, your discipline, your image, all of it. And if you think you can shame me with this nonsense, you're pathetic." His words sliced into me, but something inside had shifted since the hospital. The doctor's warning still rang in my ears. Your heart could stop. For the first time, I thought maybe letting him control me was more dangerous than defying him. I straightened my back, meeting his glare. You don't own me. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then his hand shot out, sweeping the journal from the desk. He tore a handful of pages free, crumpling them in his fist. You want to write about this. Write about how easily I can destroy what you think is yours. He tossed the shredded pages into the trash bin, his chest heaving. That night, he locked the journal away in his office. Until you learn gratitude, he said, as though he were disciplining a child. I lay awake in bed, my body rigid, my hands curled into fists under the covers. Without the journal, I felt stripped bare, voiceless again. But the anger inside me only grew. He thought he had silenced me. He didn't understand that the words were already in me now, etched into memory, carved into resolve. He couldn't unwrite what I had written. The next morning, he slid an apple across the table like nothing had happened. His smile was cold, controlled. Let's not repeat yesterday's mistake, he said smoothly. I stared at the apple, at the glossy skin reflecting the kitchen light. Something in me hardened. I picked it up, turned it slowly in my hand, and then deliberately set it back down without taking a bite. His eyes flicked up, startled. Claire. I'm not hungry, I said simply. It was a small act, barely a whisper of rebellion. But it was mine. That evening, when he went to the gym, I searched his office. My hands shook as I rifled through drawers, scanning files and papers. Finally, tucked into the back of a cabinet, I found my journal locked inside a leather portfolio. I pulled it out, clutching it to my chest. For a moment, I considered leaving it. After all, if he discovered I'd taken it back, his fury would be unimaginable. But then I remembered the shredded pages, the contempt in his voice. I couldn't leave it. Not again. I tucked it into the lining of my bag, hiding it between my sketchbooks. When Daniel returned sweaty and smug, I was sitting calmly at my desk sketching. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. But he didn't notice. Not yet. That night in the bathroom with the door locked, I opened the journal again. The ripped-out pages were gone forever, but the rest remained, my words staring back at me like a lifeline. I picked up my pen and wrote, my hand steady despite the fear he found me out. He tried to silence me, but I will not stop. Even if he tears out every page, the story is still alive, and one day I'll make sure the world sees it. Daniel thought he had clipped my wings, but he didn't realize sometimes when you try to cage something, all you do is make it desperate enough to fight harder. And I was getting desperate. The first person who truly saw me was Amy. We had been friends for years, though distance and life had stretched our contact thin. She knew me from the days when I was still full of light, when I used to bring homemade cookies to design meetings and laugh so loud in cafes that strangers turned to stare. She had known that Claire. So when she called one afternoon and asked to meet for coffee, I hesitated. Daniel didn't like me spending time with people who distracted me from my routines. But after everything, the hospital, the journal, his rage, I felt a pull stronger than fear. I wore long sleeves to hide the sharpness of my arms and extra makeup to disguise the hollows under my eyes. Still, when I walked into the cafe and Amy stood to greet me, her smile faltered. Claire, she breathed, pulling me into a hug. I felt her arms stiffen around me as though shocked by how little there was of me to hold. We sat by the window, the smell of coffee and pastries curling around us. The display case gleamed with croissants, muffins, pies, 1,000 forbidden things. My stomach clenched painfully at the sight. Amy ordered a latte and a sandwich. I asked for water. Her eyes flicked to me questioning, but she said nothing at first. We talked about safe things, her kids, her job, a mutual acquaintance's wedding. I smiled, nodded, played my role. But Amy's gaze kept drifting back to me, sharp with concern. Finally, she set her sandwich down and said softly, Claire, what's going on? The words lodged in my throat. I almost said nothing. The lie had become second nature, but the dam inside me cracked just a little. I'm fine, I began automatically. Then my voice wavered. I just... I haven't been feeling well. Not feeling well. She repeated, her brow furrowing. Claire, you look like you're fading away. Your skin and bones. You're exhausted. This isn't just not feeling well. Tears stung my eyes. I stared at my hands on the table, the veins standing out like blue rivers under thin skin. Daniel, he likes me thin. He says I'm prettier this way. Amy's face hardened. He likes you thin? Claire, this isn't about liking. This is abuse. The word hit me like a slap. Abuse. I had never let myself name it that way. I shook my head quickly, panic rising. No. He's just strict. He wants me to be disciplined. He says it's love. Amy reached across the table and gripped my trembling hand. Love doesn't starve you, Claire. Love doesn't bruise your body or crush your spirit. What you're describing, it's control. It's cruelty. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. The cafe around us, blurred voices fading. All I could feel was her hand, warm and steady, anchoring me. For the first time in months, I let myself whisper the truth. I'm so hungry, Amy. All the time. And I'm so tired of pretending I'm fine. Her eyes filled with tears. Oh, Claire. We sat there in silence for a long moment, the weight of my confession pressing between us. Then Amy squeezed my hand tighter. You don't have to do this alone. You need help. Real help. A doctor, therapy support. And you need to get away from him. The words terrified me. Get away. Leave. The thought sent my heart racing. Daniel would never let me go. He'd find me, punish me, strip me of everything. I can't, I whispered. He'll destroy me. You're already being destroyed, Amy said firmly. If you stay, he'll take everything until there's nothing left. I wanted to believe her. A part of me did. But fear had been woven into my bones for so long that breaking free seemed impossible. Still, her words lit a spark in me, a reminder that the world outside Daniel's control still existed. Before we parted, Amy pressed a small card into my hand. This is my therapist's number. She's incredible. Even if you just talk once, it's something. Promise me you'll consider it. I slipped the card into my bag next to my journal. Another seed. Another secret. That evening, back at home, Daniel immediately noticed my distracted expression. Where were you? He demanded, his eyes narrowing. Just coffee with Amy, I said lightly, forcing a smile. He studied me for a long moment, suspicion flickering in his gaze. Did you eat? My throat tightened. Just water. Satisfied, he nodded and slid an apple across the table. Good girl. But as I bit into it, I felt the card burning in my bag like a hidden flame. Amy's words echoed in my mind. Love doesn't starve you. This is abuse. For the first time, I didn't just swallow the apple. I swallowed hope. Amy had seen me. She had named it. And once something has a name, it's harder to ignore. I wasn't ready yet, not fully. But now I knew I wasn't as alone as Daniel wanted me to believe. There's a certain kind of betrayal that feels like a second death. Starvation had already hollowed me, but when I discovered the truth about Daniel's affair, it was as though he'd scooped out the last pieces of me that were still clinging on. It began with a scent. One evening, he came home later than usual, his shirt collar, rumpled hair a little too tousled. When he leaned down to kiss the top of my head, I smelled it perfume. Not mine. Something sweet, floral, expensive. Long meeting, I asked carefully, my voice steady, even as my stomach twisted. He loosened his tie. Clients can be demanding. I nodded, pretending to accept it, but my heart knew. Women always know. The confirmation came days later. I was folding laundry in his office, the one place I rarely dared to linger, when his phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with a message. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. My fingers froze around the shirt in my hands. I read the name Melissa. The air rushed out of my lungs. I stood there, the laundry slipping from my arms, my whole body trembling. Melissa, the woman from the gala, the one I had seen laughing with him while I wilted in the corner invisible. Younger, thinner, effortless. Of course it was her. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was in his chair staring at the phone as more messages popped up. Wish I could see you tonight. You're so much more exciting than her. Her. That word stabbed deeper than anything. That was me reduced to a pronoun, a shadow in the background of his double life. My hands shook as I put the phone back exactly as I'd found it. That night when Daniel came home, I watched him differently. Every gesture, every smile felt like a performance. He poured his wine, slid an apple toward me, and asked about my day as though he hadn't just betrayed me with another woman. I answered politely, my voice even, but inside something had snapped. It wasn't hunger anymore, it was fury. Later, lying awake beside him, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. He had starved me, humiliated me, silenced me, and now he had replaced me. I had bent myself into nothing for him, and still I wasn't enough. But maybe that was the gift hidden in the wound. If I was never enough for him, then maybe I didn't have to keep trying. The journal's words echoed in my head. One day I will leave him. For the first time, I believed it. The next morning, I studied him as he adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror. He looked sharp, confident, untouchable. He caught my reflection and smirked. What he asked. Nothing, I said softly, my voice calm. But inside, I was screaming, how do you think they will react when I reveal that to everyone? I imagined his family, his colleagues, his precious circle of admirers learning the truth. Not just about his affair, but about the cruelty he called love. The man who starved his wife into silence. The man who betrayed her anyway. I pictured his face when the mask shattered. And in that vision, for the first time in months, I felt full. Revenge doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly like a storm on the horizon, first, the whisper of wind, then the darkening of clouds, until you can't ignore what's coming. After discovering Daniel's affair, I no longer saw him as untouchable. He had cracks, and I intended to pry them wide open. I started small. While he showered in the mornings, I slipped into his office and scrolled through his phone. The messages were plentiful, careless. He and Melissa didn't bother with subtlety. There were photos her at the gym mirror, her lips pursed, her body lean and toned. There were late-night promises, inside jokes, plans disguised as meetings. I took pictures of everything, storing them on a hidden flash drive. My hands shook each time, but the tremors felt like power instead of fear. The evidence piled up, each message a nail in the coffin of the image he had built. Then came the finances. I knew his passwords. He had insisted I memorize them for emergencies. He never imagined I would be the emergency. His bank statements told their own story. Hotel bookings, lavish dinners, designer gifts. Thousands spent on Melissa while I chewed apples and drank water. I printed copies, slid them between pages of my journal. The stack grew thicker, heavier, a paper trail of betrayal. I also began documenting the cruelty at home. Every apple he placed before me, every cutting remark, every time he touched my body like a sculptor critiquing flawed marble. I wrote it down, dated and detailed. Sometimes when he berated me, I would glance at the clock, memorizing the time. Later, I recorded it in the journal. 7:42 p.m. called me. Soft, said no one would want me if I stopped obeying. It was exhausting, painful, but necessary. If I was going to confront him, I needed more than my voice. I needed proof. Meanwhile, I practiced silence. To Daniel, I became compliant again. I ate the apple. I smiled at dinners. I nodded at his lectures about discipline. But behind that silence, I was sharpening myself. Every yes I gave him was another step toward no. Amy noticed the change. Over coffee, she leaned in and whispered, "You're different. Stronger. What are you planning?" I smiled faintly. Just planting seeds. Her eyes softened. When you're ready, Claire, I'll be there. The hardest part was pretending at night. Lying beside him, listening to his steady breath, knowing he dreamed of her while I plotted in the dark. Sometimes rage threatened to spill out, to scream, to claw at him until he admitted everything. But I held it in. Patience became my armor. One evening, as he admired himself in the mirror before another meeting, he said, "You're lucky, you know. Most women your age would kill to look like you." I looked at him, at the man who had stripped me of laughter, of health, of dignity, and forced a small smile. "You're right," I murmured. "I am lucky." But inside I was thinking, I'm lucky because soon I won't be yours anymore. I began rehearsing the confrontation in my mind. Where it would happen. Who would be there? How I would reveal not just the affair but the starvation, the cruelty, the truth. He thought he had silenced me by ripping pages from my journal. What he didn't know was that I had turned my life into one giant record, and soon the world would read it. Every secret preparation fed me more than any apple ever could. Each piece of evidence, each hidden plan, it was nourishment, and with every passing day I could feel it, the storm was coming, and this time Daniel wouldn't survive it. The night of the confrontation began like so many others with an apple. Daniel placed it on the white plate as though setting a trap. "Here," he said smoothly, "your dinner." His tone was light, but his eyes searched mine, always measuring, always waiting for defiance. But that evening I didn't pick it up. I let the apple sit between us, gleaming in the soft kitchen light, a symbol of everything he had stolen from me. "Eat," he ordered, his voice sharpening. I folded my hands in my lap. "No." The word hung in the air, startling in its simplicity. He blinked, thrown off. "No." He laughed, but the sound rang hollow. "Claire, don't be ridiculous." I lifted my gaze to his steady and unwavering. "I'm done." His smirk faded. "Done with what?" "With this." I gestured to the apple, to the kitchen, to him. "With starving. With being your project. With being erased." For a moment silence swallowed the room. Then his face hardened. "You've lost your mind," he spat, pushing back from the table. "After everything I've done for you," I stood, cutting him off. "No. After everything you've done to me." His eyes darkened, fury simmering just beneath the surface. "Careful, Claire." But I didn't cower this time. My pulse pounded, but it wasn't fear. It was rage. "You call this love, making me eat one apple a day until I faint in public, telling me I'm only beautiful when I disappear. That's not love, Daniel. That's cruelty." He stepped closer, towering over me. "You wouldn't survive without me. You're weak. Pathetic." I let the words wash over me, no longer sinking in. "Funny," I said quietly, "because I've survived despite you." His jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. Instead, he sneered. "You think anyone cares? You think people will believe you over me?" I reached for the folder I had hidden beneath the counter. Calmly, deliberately, I set it on the table and slid it toward him. "What's this?" he snapped. "Proof." He flipped it open, and his face drained of color. Inside were printed messages, bank statements, photos. His affair with Melissa laid bare in black and white. Every word, every receipt, every betrayal. He looked up at me, his mask cracking. "You, I know everything," I interrupted. "Every hotel, every dinner, every lie." His voice rose sharp and panicked. "You went through my things." "Yes," I said evenly. "The way you've gone through my life, my body, my freedom. You took everything from me, Daniel, and now I'm taking it back." He lunged forward, grabbing the folder, tearing at the papers. "No one will see this. I won't let you ruin me." But I didn't flinch. I leaned closer, my voice low and steady. "It's too late. Copies are already safe. If anything happens to me, they'll know. His hands froze mid-rip. He stared at me, realization dawning. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. I straightened my body, trembling but strong. You can't control me anymore. Not my body. Not my voice. Not my life. He tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. You're bluffing. I smiled, small, cold, certain. Try me. The confrontation ended not with shouting, but with silence. He stood there seething, clutching torn papers that no longer protected him. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving the untouched apple behind. For years, that fruit had been a symbol of my prison. Tonight, it was a symbol of my freedom. As I closed the bedroom door behind me, my hands still shaking, I whispered to myself, "It's not over, but it's begun." I had faced him. I had spoken the truth aloud. And in his eyes, for the first time, I saw it, the crack of fear. The storm was here, and I was no longer afraid of the lightning. I had spent weeks gathering my evidence, practicing my words in the quiet of my studio, rehearsing how I would finally tear the mask from Daniel's face. But nothing could prepare me for the weight of that moment, standing in front of his family, his colleagues, his perfect circle of admirers ready to reveal the truth. It was his father's birthday dinner. A grand affair, of course, held at a private dining hall, draped in white linen and glittering chandeliers. Daniel loved occasions like this, any chance to show off his trophy wife, to bask in the admiration of people who only ever saw the surface. "Remember," he whispered as we entered, his hand pressing against the small of my back, "you're the reflection of me tonight. Don't forget it." But what he didn't realize was that I intended to be his reflection, the one that showed every flaw he'd tried to hide. We sat at the long table, waiters gliding back and forth with platters of roasted meats, vegetables glistening in butter baskets of warm bread. The smells hit me hard, my stomach twisting, but I stayed calm. I had eaten something earlier in secret, Amy had insisted, so I would have the strength to face what I planned to do. Daniel, as always, filled the silence with his voice. He talked about work, his gym routine, his discipline, throwing in casual jabs about my delicate appetite. People laughed politely. His mother shook her head with a smile. "Claire, you're lucky to have a husband who takes such care of you." I smiled faintly, biting down the fury that burned in my chest. They don't know. They don't see. But tonight they would. When dessert arrived, a towering chocolate cake, candles flickering on top, I knew it was time. The family sang, glasses clinked, laughter swelled. Daniel leaned back in his chair, smug and satisfied. I rose slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. Conversation dimmed as eyes turned toward me. "I'd like to say something." I began, my voice steady, though my heart thundered. Daniel's brow furrowed. "Claire." I cut him off. "I need you all to know the truth." I held up the folder I had brought with me, tucked under my chair until now. The weight of it felt like a weapon in my hands. For years, I said, my voice rising, Daniel has presented us as the perfect couple. But the reality is very different. Murmurs rippled through the table. Daniel's face went pale, then red. "Claire, sit down. This isn't the time." I ignored him. I flipped open the folder and laid out the first set of pages on the table: bank statements, hotel receipts, photographs. Gasps filled the room. "He's been having an affair?" I said, my voice breaking but clear. "With a younger woman," while telling me I was never enough. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the rustle of papers, as his sister pulled one closer, her eyes widening. Daniel shot to his feet, his chair toppling behind him. "This is absurd." "She's lying," but I wasn't finished. I pulled out my journal, flipping to the pages I had copied. "And while he betrayed me, this is what he demanded of me. 1 apple a day. Nothing more. He starved me, humiliated me, called it love, and I nearly died because of it." I read aloud a passage I had written months ago. I am starving, but not just for food, I am starving for freedom. The words hung in the air like smoke. Faces shifted around the table, shock, horror, disbelief. His father's jaw tightened. His mother covered her mouth with trembling hands. Daniel lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers from me, but his brother intercepted him, holding him back. "What the hell is this, Daniel? She's exaggerating," Daniel shouted, his voice cracking. "She's sick. She's unstable." I straightened my voice, cutting through his. "No. I was sick because of you. Because you decided I was only worthy when I disappeared." The words poured out of me, years of silence breaking like a dam. I fainted in public. I ended up in the hospital. The doctor told me my heart could stop, and still you told me I wasn't thin enough. And all the while, you were with her. Gasps again. Melissa's name appeared on the documents, her messages printed in black ink. The evidence was undeniable. Daniel thrashed against his brother's grip, his face contorted in rage. "You'll regret this, Claire," he bellowed. But I no longer feared him. I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "No, Daniel. For once, you'll be the one who regrets." The room erupted. His mother burst into tears. His father's face turned crimson with fury, barking at him about shame, about betrayal. His colleagues exchanged horrified looks, whispering. And I felt something I hadn't in years. Lightness. As though the weight of all those apples, all that silence, had finally lifted off my chest. I gathered my papers calmly, tucking them back into the folder. "I won't be your reflection anymore," I said quietly, though everyone heard. "From now on, I am my own." I left the dining hall to the sound of voices rising behind me, accusations, arguments, the collapse of Daniel's carefully curated image. Outside, the night air hit my face, cool and freeing. I drew in a deep breath, tasting something sweeter than any apple: victory. The night I left Daniel for good, the sky was heavy with rain. It drummed against the windows, steady and cleansing, as if the world itself was ready to wash me free of him. I had gone home only once after the revelation at his father's birthday dinner, just once, to gather what was mine. He had raged when I walked through the door, his voice raw from shouting at his family, his eyes wild with a desperation I had never seen before. "You've ruined me," he spat, pacing like a caged animal. "Do you know what they're saying about me, about us?" "Yes," I said calmly, stuffing clothes into a bag. "And for once, they're saying the truth." He tried everything in that moment, threats, pleading, even sudden tenderness. "We can fix this, Claire," he said, his voice breaking. "You're nothing without me. You'll see." But his words no longer held power. I zipped my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked past him. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch when his hand reached out to grab me. He stopped short, his fingers curling in empty air. He knew. He had lost me. Freedom didn't taste like triumph at first. It tasted like uncertainty, like fear, like the ache of stepping into an unfamiliar room. But beneath all of that, there was a sweetness I couldn't ignore, the taste of possibility. Amy took me in for a while. Her house was warm, filled with laughter, the smell of fresh coffee in the mornings, and the sound of children's footsteps. At first, I felt like a ghost haunting her kitchen, but slowly I began to re-enter life. She coaxed me to eat small portions, gentle encouragement. The first bowl of soup felt like both a betrayal and a miracle. I cried over it, the spoon trembling in my hand. "I don't deserve this," I whispered. "Yes, you do," she said firmly, her hand on mine. "Every bite." And so I learned to eat again, to trust my body again. Recovery wasn't neat. Some nights I still woke, sweating, heart racing, convinced Daniel was standing over me with an apple in his hand, ready to press me back into silence. But when the panic passed, I would breathe, remind myself, he is not here. He cannot touch me now. The journal became my anchor once more. I wrote about the hospital, about Amy, about the confrontation, about the way freedom felt both terrifying and exhilarating. One entry read, "I am still bruised, still thin, still learning, but I am alive." And that is enough for today. Another, "One day I will eat cake again. Not because someone permits me to, but because I want to." Weeks later, I received word that Daniel's reputation had unraveled. His colleagues distanced themselves. His family, once so proud, barely spoke his name. Melissa had disappeared from his life as quickly as she had entered. The man who starved me for control was now starving for attention. And for the first time, I didn't care. He had always believed I couldn't exist without him, but I was proving one slow step at a time that I could. The first time I baked again, I nearly collapsed with emotion. Flour dusted the counters, butter softened in a bowl, sugar spilled like sunlight. My hands trembled as I cracked eggs, the smell of vanilla flooding the kitchen. When the cake rose in the oven, golden and imperfect, I laughed loud, full, real. And when I cut into it, steam curling upward, I took a bite and let it sit on my tongue like a holy thing. I wasn't just eating, I was reclaiming myself. Sometimes when I walk past a fruit stand, I see the apples stacked high, shiny, and cold. I pause, staring at them, remembering. They no longer hold the power they once did. They are just fruit, now sweet, tart, ordinary. I don't hate them anymore, but I will never let one apple define me again. To anyone listening, to anyone who has ever been starved of food, of love, of respect, hear me, you are more than someone else's measure of worth. You are not a reflection of another's hunger. You are enough. As I close this chapter, I think of all the nights I lay awake, bones aching, wondering if I would ever escape. And now here I am, scarred but free, thin but growing stronger, fragile but alive. Freedom's taste isn't bitter. It isn't sweet. It is real. And once you taste it, you never go back. This is the end of my story, the story of a woman who was starved into silence, but found her voice again. The scars remain reminders of the years I lost, but they no longer bind me. They remind me instead of what I survived. If you've ever been in a place where someone tried to control you, tried to erase you piece by piece, know this. It is possible to break free. It is possible to reclaim your voice, your body, your life. I am no longer the woman who ate one apple a day. I am the woman who writes her own story, who feeds herself with choice, with laughter, with love. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told you're not enough, remember you are more than their lies. Thank you for listening to my journey. If my story has touched you, I invite you to share your own or to subscribe for more stories like this. Together, maybe we can remind each other of the truth: we are not defined by cruelty, but by our ability to rise above it.